It's the story of a father's love, twisted into betrayal. They took my home, my peace, and my name, but they forgot one thing. The quieter I became, the louder my revenge grew. This is the silent revenge. Before I tell you my truth, make sure you subscribe, because what you're about to hear is not a movie. My name is William Carter. For 45 years, I woke up in the same brick house on Willow Lane, where the smell of my wife's pancakes filled every corner and the laughter of my sons, Daniel and Ethan, was louder than the morning birds. Back then, silence meant peace. Now, it means danger. I built my life from dust. At 21, I was a mechanic with greasy hands and a pocket full of dreams. By 40, I owned Carter Automotives, a company that put my sons through private school and gave them everything I never had: education, comfort, and respect. My wife, Martha, used to say, "Will, you spoil them too much." I'd laugh and tell her, "They're boys. They'll learn." But she was right. They learned the world owed them everything, and that their father would never stop giving. When Martha died, something in that house went quiet. The kitchen smelled of cold coffee instead of pancakes, and the clock in the hallway ticked louder than my heartbeat. Daniel handled the funeral with the efficiency of a businessman. Ethan cried like a child, but not for long. Within months, Daniel suggested expanding the company. He said, "Dad, you're tired. Let me take the reins." Ethan nodded, following his brother's lead as he always did. They sounded sincere, proud even. I trusted them, because a father's heart is a foolish thing. For the first time in decades, I took a break. I let them handle the deals, the accounts, the board meetings. They smiled in every photo, shook my hand at every event, and called me the legend. Then one morning, my accountant called me, his voice shaking. "Mr. Carter," he said, "you might want to check your company's ownership records." My sons had transferred 85% of the shares to themselves, without my signature. At first, I thought it was a mistake. But the signatures were there, perfect copies of mine. My own blood had forged my name. When I confronted them that evening, they didn't deny it. Daniel looked straight at me and said, "Dad, it's for your own good. You're old. You could ruin everything with one wrong decision." Ethan stood behind him, eyes downcast. I asked, "You both think I'm a burden?" Daniel replied coldly, "We think it's time you rest." Rest. That word still burns in my mind. That night, I sat in Martha's empty chair and listened to the silence she left behind. I realized my sons didn't want my peace, they wanted my absence. So, I gave them what they wanted. I left. No fights, no police, no lawyers. Just silence. But I didn't leave defeated. Because when a father's love dies, something darker is born in its place. When I walked out of that house on Willow Lane, I carried nothing but a worn leather bag, my late wife's locket, and the sound of my sons laughing behind closed doors. They thought I wouldn't survive a week without them. They forgot who built the walls they were standing inside. For the first few months I stayed in a small apartment on the edge of the city, one room, a cracked window, and a view of the factory chimneys I once owned. Every night I watched Carter Automotive's lights burn through the darkness, and every night I whispered to Martha's picture, "Don't worry, love. They'll learn what silence can do." I didn't drink. I didn't sleep much either. I read, observed, planned. Revenge wasn't about rage, it was about patience. I began quietly visiting old employees, the men and women who'd worked beside me long before my sons ever wore a tie. They still called me Mr. Carter with respect, and when they heard what Daniel and Ethan had done, their eyes filled with the same fury I felt. We met every Friday in a dusty workshop that used to be my first garage. Together, we rebuilt an engine, not for a car, but for an idea, the rebirth of my legacy. In silence, we designed a new company on paper, one registered in a different state, under a new name, W&M Industries. W for William. M for Martha. For months I let Carter Automotives believe I was gone, perhaps even dead. Daniel and Ethan paraded through media interviews, declaring themselves the new generation of innovation. They moved into my office, sold half the workforce, and bought luxury cars with my initials still engraved on the keys. Every time I saw their photos online, my heartbeat slowed instead of quickened. Anger was turning into precision. Then fate handed me my first real weapon, a letter. It came from my banker, a man who'd been loyal for 20 years. Mr. Carter, I thought you should know that your sons plan to liquidate the original Carter Automotive's branch next month. The one you built with your own hands. They were going to erase my beginning. That night, I drove out to the old branch, the same garage where my name first appeared on a steel plate. The building was dark, but I still had a key. The smell of oil and iron filled my lungs like oxygen after drowning. I walked to the center of the floor and knelt. The concrete was cold, rough, and real. I whispered, "You can take everything from a man, except what he remembers." And that's when I decided my revenge wouldn't be loud. It would be quiet, patient, and absolute. I began recording a series of videos, confessions, stories, truths, explaining everything that had happened. In each one, I spoke calmly, almost gently, as if teaching my sons again. One day, I said into the camera, "You'll watch this and finally hear me." Those recordings were stored in hidden drives scheduled to release automatically through a trusted lawyer when the right time came. Meanwhile, W&M Industries began taking shape. I reached out to clients who'd left Carter Automotives after Daniel's reckless decisions. They trusted me more than ever. Within 6 months, quiet deals were signed, and contracts began to move away from my son's company like birds leaving a sinking ship. Daniel noticed, of course. He started calling. At first, polite messages. "Dad, where are you? We need to talk." Then colder. "We heard rumors you're working with our competitors. Tell me it's not true." I didn't reply. Silence was my answer. But the best part of silence, it makes others talk. Ethan began to doubt Daniel's leadership. Their unity, the thing that made their betrayal so strong, started to fracture. I watched from the shadows as the empire they stole began to rot from within. And still, I said nothing. Because sometimes, the loudest scream is the one you never make. I stayed away for almost 1 year. No calls. No visits. No words. My sons thought I had given up, maybe even lost my mind. But in truth, I was more focused than ever. I had built a small workshop again, just like in the old days. Some of my loyal workers joined me quietly. We started making car parts, nothing big at first, just quality work, the kind people trusted. Little by little word spread. Customers came back. They said, "Mr. Carter, your products are still the best." And I smiled, knowing my name still meant something honest. Daniel and Ethan didn't know I was behind the new company. All they knew was that their sales were falling. They blamed each other, fought in meetings, and started losing control. My banker friend told me once, "Mr. Carter, your silence is louder than a war." And he was right. I didn't need to shout. I didn't need to fight. All I had to do was stay calm, keep building, and let the truth catch up with them. One evening, Ethan came to see me. He looked tired, older, and nervous. He said, "Dad, can we talk?" For a moment, I saw the same little boy who used to hold my hand at the park. But then I remembered the papers, the signatures they forged, the house they stole. Still, I opened the door. He sat quietly and said, "Daniel has gone too far. He sold more of the company. We're losing everything." I didn't speak. I just listened. He kept talking, tears in his eyes. "Dad, I didn't want this. Daniel forced me. Please help me fix it." I looked at him and said softly, "You both made your choices. You killed your mother's name and my trust. Why should I help you now?" He whispered, "Because I'm still your son." For a second, my heart broke again. But pain is a good teacher. It never lets you forget. I said, "If you truly are my son, prove it. Leave Daniel. Walk away from what you destroyed." He nodded slowly, but I could see fear in his eyes. He wasn't brave enough yet. That night, I realized my revenge wasn't done. One son had guilt. The other had greed. But both still had to face the silence they gave me. Days passed after Ethan's visit. He never came again. Maybe he was scared. Maybe Daniel stopped him. But I knew one thing: their world was falling apart. Carter Automotives was losing money fast. Daniel tried to hide it with fake reports and big promises, but truth doesn't stay hidden for long. One by one, investors pulled out. People started whispering, "The Carter brothers are finished." I watched it all quietly. Every broken deal, every angry call, every sleepless night they faced, it was the same pain I once felt when they betrayed me. Sometimes I felt sorry. But then I remembered how Daniel looked at me the night they took my company, cold and proud, and that feeling disappeared. One morning, I received a message from my lawyer. He said, "Mr. Carter, your sons are trying to sell your old house, the one on Willow Lane." That house wasn't just walls and bricks. It was where Martha cooked, where my boys grew up, where our laughter once lived. They wanted to sell it like it was nothing. That day, I decided my silence had done its job. Now it was time for them to hear me, one last time. I went to the house. It looked different, lifeless. The garden was dry, the windows covered in dust. When I walked in, Daniel was there with a real estate agent. He froze when he saw me. "Dad?" he said, voice shaking. You're here?" I looked around the room slowly. "This house still remembers who built it," I said. "Do you?" The agent left quietly. It was just me and Daniel now. He tried to act calm, but I saw fear in his eyes. "Dad, I was only doing what's best for the company," he said. I smiled a little. "You mean what's best for yourself?" He didn't answer. I walked to the center of the room, the same spot where I once taught them how to fix a toy car. I said softly, "You both took everything from me, my business, my peace, and even this home. But the one thing you'll never take is my silence. Because my silence already destroyed you." Daniel looked confused. Then his phone buzzed. He glanced at it, his face turned pale. News had broken online: Carter Automotive's files for bankruptcy. Former workers moved to new company, W&M Industries, founded by William Carter. He looked up at me, trembling. You did this?" I said quietly. "No, son. You did. I just watched." I left the house, feeling the wind brush my face. For the first time in years I felt peace, not anger, not hate, just peace. Martha's voice echoed in my mind. "They'll learn." And I whispered back, "They did." As I walked away, I didn't look back. Because the past had already been buried under the silence that became my revenge. A month passed after I walked out of that old house on Willow Lane. The world finally knew the truth: Carter Automotives was gone. People said, "William Carter is back." But I wasn't back for business. I was back for peace. One evening, as I sat on my porch watching the sunset, I heard a car stop outside. When I looked up, I saw Ethan stepping out slowly. He looked thinner, tired, and broken. He walked toward me, carrying a small box in his hands. "Dad," he said softly. For a second, I didn't know what to say. The last time I saw him, he couldn't even look me in the eyes. He placed the box on the table and whispered, "These are Mom's things. I found them when we cleaned the office." I opened it. Inside was Martha's old photo frame, her ring, and a small keychain that said, "Family First." I felt my chest tighten. "You kept these?" I asked. He nodded. "Daniel was going to throw them away. I couldn't let that happen." We sat in silence for a while. The wind was gentle, and for the first time, the silence between us didn't hurt. After a few minutes, Ethan said, "Dad, Daniel left. He sold what was left of the company and disappeared. I tried to stop him, but he wouldn't listen." I could see guilt in his eyes, not the fake kind, but the real one that makes a man's heart heavy. He continued, "I came here because... I'm sorry." I destroyed everything you built. I followed Daniel blindly. And I don't want your forgiveness, but I needed to tell you that I finally understand what you were trying to teach us. I didn't say anything right away. I just looked at him. The same boy who once fixed toy cars with me in the garage. The boy who lost his way but somehow found the road back. Finally, I said softly, Ethan, revenge gave me peace for a while, but forgiveness gives peace forever. He looked up, surprised. You forgive me? He asked. I nodded. I forgive you, son. Because your mother would have wanted it. And because you came back, not for money, not for business, but for love. Ethan's eyes filled with tears. He stood up and hugged me tightly, and for the first time in many years, I felt warmth instead of anger. That night, we talked for hours, about his childhood, about Martha, about everything that went wrong. Before he left, he said, Dad, if you ever want, I'd like to work with you again. Maybe not for money, but to rebuild something good. I smiled. We'll see, son. One step at a time. When he drove away, I looked up at the sky and whispered, Martha, your boy came home. Months passed quietly. Ethan started visiting every weekend. He helped me repair the old workshop. Together, we painted the walls, fixed the tools, and even made a small sign again. Carter and Son, honest work, honest hands. It wasn't a big company anymore. No offices, no fancy cars. Just two men, a father and a son, working side by side. One morning, while we were fixing an old car, Ethan looked at me and said, Dad, I used to think success meant money. But now I think it's peace, like this. I smiled. You learned that the hard way, son. He nodded and laughed softly. Yes, but I'm grateful I still have a chance to make things right. Sometimes neighbors stopped by and whispered, Is that the Carter boy? The one who ruined everything? And I just smiled. No, I said. That's the man who fixed everything. Life slowly became calm again. Daniel never returned, but I stopped waiting for him. I prayed that one day he'd also find his way, just like Ethan did. One evening, Ethan and I sat on the porch, the same porch where I had once planned revenge. The sky was glowing orange, and birds were flying home. Ethan handed me a cup of tea and said, You know, Dad, if Mom could see us now, she'd be proud. I looked at him and smiled gently. She can see us, son. That's why the wind feels warm tonight. He smiled too. And in that quiet moment, I realized something. Silence doesn't always mean anger. Sometimes, silence means peace. The revenge that once burned inside me was gone. In its place was forgiveness, the kind that heals more than it hurts. I had lost everything once, my business, my name, and my sons. But I gained something greater, truth, peace, and the bond of love reborn. Before going inside, Ethan said softly, Dad, thank you for giving me another chance. I placed my hand on his shoulder and said, No, son. Thank you for coming home. That night, I stood at the window, watching the stars. And for the first time in years, I whispered, not in pain but in peace. The silent revenge is finally over.